name is Karin. I am from the Netherlands, and I will speak to you a little bit about prostitution and the legalization of prostitution in my country. This is a statue that is located in Amsterdam at the square where there's window prostitution. The name of the woman of the statue is Belle. You can see, I wanted to show you this image because this is the image that we have of prostitution in my country. The image of a strong woman with her hands on her hip, her nose in the air, who knows what she is doing. And that is the image that the Netherlands likes to portray of women in prostitution, of strong women, of independent women in prostitution. The reality is different, and the reality is not that of a strong, independent woman who is proud standing there in the window, because the reality is that it is not easy to be in prostitution. It's not easy to be in a window, be displayed like that, to live that life. What I want to do, I want to show you a couple of pictures first to show how we view prostitution and how it is portrayed. What you see here is a picture of two twins. They are called Fokkens. They are two ladies from Amsterdam who lived and grew up in the city of Amsterdam. They are from a Yiddish background, and they speak in the real Amsterdam dialect with a lot of Yiddish. They are over 70 years old, and they are still today in prostitution. They became very famous because they made a documentary about them, and they are now also seen as the stereotypical image of originally Dutch woman who is in prostitution. But there's another side to it, because I think it's quite sad if you are 70 years old and this is what you do. There is an image of Theo Heuft. He's the owner of Japjum, which was once the most famous brothel, upper class brothel. The image you see is a cover of his book, his autobiography. It was turned into a musical that has toured around the country as a success story of a good undertaker. This is a poster from Japjum in the 1980s. Back then, prostitution was different. What you see is the image of two doves, because prostitution, before it was legalized, it was illegal. There is a law since 1911 that banned brothels and pimping. And so advertising for prostitution was not tolerated, and the symbol of the two doves was to be seen only for those who knew what it meant, and that it was a reference to prostitution. In the 1980s, there was a movement in the Netherlands, the 1990s, and the first law proposals were tabled in Parliament to ask to legalize all aspects of prostitution. And there were campaigns funded with public money, government campaigns, such as this one. This is one of a series. The text says you are required to be good in social interactions. And in a red balloon it says prostitution, a normal job. This is another of the posters. The text says taxable income. Another one, it reads open from 9 to 5, prostitution, a normal job. This is a poster campaign by a sex work rights organization in the run-up to the legalization. The Netherlands was the first country in the world to legalize all aspects of prostitution. In the 1st of October 2000, a law entered into force which lifted the ban on brothels and lifted the ban on pimping. Prostitution itself has never been illegal in the Netherlands. That is, to offer sex for money has always been legal. What was illegal was advertisements, brothels, and pimping. But by lifting this, all aspects of prostitution became legal, and that was the first country in the world. Sweden, 1 year before that, in 1999, was the first country in the world to ban the purchase of sexual services. They criminalized the client, the sex buyer. This is a poster, public campaign from Sweden in the early 2000s. It reads, 1 man in 8 has bought sex. Sweden has done an evaluation of their prostitution legislation in 2010 by a woman called Anna Skarhed. The number of 1 man in 8 has gone down, but the most important accomplishment of the Swedish law was that there has been a change in mentality, because public support for the Swedish law has increased. 70% of the people support the ban on the purchase of sexual services, and it is mainly the younger generation, young people under 30 years old. It's a law funded in certain principles of equality between men and women. A law that came out of campaigning by the women's movement also since the 1980s, the 1990s. It was a very long process, which took several decades, where especially the women's movement was very involved, who have done a strong analysis, a gender analysis based on the work with survivors of prostitution, with women who have been in prostitution, with a lot of debates within the women's movement about what it means to be in prostitution and what it means to pay for sexual services. What happened in the Netherlands was the lifting of this ban. The administrative responsibility was transferred to the local level, the municipal level, and there was an introduction of a distinction between human trafficking on the one hand and prostitution, voluntary prostitution on the other hand. So we broke down, took apart the connection between prostitution and trafficking, and we said we draw a line, and these are two separate issues. The idea behind the law was that we could increase state control on prostitution, because if we regulate it on a local level, we can do police checks, we can do taxes, you can check working conditions, have health regulations, fire safety standards, and in that way improve the working conditions of women so that prostitution becomes a job, a prostitute becomes a sex worker, and she enters into the legal system. That was the idea, to regularize her status, so that she would have access to social benefits. Now, the approaches of Sweden and the Netherlands are diametrically opposed. What I would like to ask from you is to do an exercise with me and think about prostitution along with me. There are three fundamental questions that we have to ask ourselves here. The first question I would like to pose to you is to think about who are the people who are in prostitution. What do we know about them? What is their sex? How old are they? Where are they from? What is their nationality? How old were they when they started in prostitution? What language do they speak? What kind of school, what kind of education have they had? How did they grow up? What was their home situation? What was their family situation? What is their annual income? Then I would like to ask you to think a little bit about who are the men who pay for sexual services. What do we know about them? And I would like to ask you the same questions. How old are they? Where do they come from? What language do they speak? What is their background? What is their annual income? What is their family situation? Are they married? Do they have children? Are they parents? Where do they come from? If you put those two together, you see that there is a difference in age, a difference in backgrounds, a difference in where they come from, a difference in how rich they are, what social class, what kind of education they have enjoyed. And what does this mean? So think about what it means, prostitution. And I hope that you can see what I see and see that there is a clear power difference between somebody who's older, somebody who's younger, somebody who's rich, somebody who's poor, somebody who is local, somebody who is foreign, somebody who is legal in a country, somebody who is illegal, somebody who speaks a language, somebody who does not have the same command of language. And that is something that the people and the women's movement in Sweden have thought about a lot, and that they have drawn conclusions about, and that they have based a policy upon. The people in the Netherlands have made a different analysis and have made different conclusions. I have made my own thought exercise and have done a lot of research on this, and prostitution is an expression of power difference. I would like you to think about it for yourself and come to your own conclusions about it. Now, let me talk a little bit more about the Netherlands, because we have introduced the legalization of prostitution. How did that work out? There have been a number of evaluations. The most important ones are the government evaluations, which have been repeated with the same research methods every couple of years. The first one was in 2002, and they found that short 2 years after the legalization, there was a big difference between local governments, and there was a move away from legal prostitution to illegal prostitution, because if I put on a different hat and I am a pimp today, it is more difficult to comply with all the government rules than to work in the illegal sector, where I don't have to deal with the police, I don't have to deal with the fire department, I don't have to deal with social security checks. So where can I make the most money? The study in 2006 was part of the official evaluation of the policy in the Netherlands, which led to the Daalder report in 2007, and they measured prostitution against the goals, that the official goals that were formulated for the law. One was that we wanted to have voluntary prostitution legalized. The conclusion of the report was that the majority of the industry was outside of government control. So it was very difficult for the researchers to tell if somebody was voluntary or involuntary. Same for forced prostitution, they were not possible to comment on that. Minors in legal brothels, they hardly encountered. The working conditions for women, did they improve? What they found was that the emotional well-being of people in prostitution decreased on all accounts, on all themes. The use of sedatives, of drugs, increased. There was a high need for exit programs, for ways to be able to stop prostitution, but there were no possibilities to, no programs to help people exit prostitution. Now the separation between prostitution and criminal peripheral phenomena or trafficking, that was impossible to see how it was separated, because they could not determine who is voluntary, who is involuntary, and what is trafficking and what is not. The presence of illegals in legal prostitution has gone down, because in 2004 the European Union opened its borders, and most people in prostitution in the Netherlands are from Eastern Europe, but they have a European passport. The police in 2008 did a report. This is the National Police Forces who had very severe criminal cases, human trafficking criminal cases, within the legalized prostitution sector, and the National Police concluded that 50 to 90% of the people in legal prostitution are there involuntary. I'm gonna round up. There was a law proposal in 2009 following all the evaluations to see if we could improve on the legalization. They wanted to give permits to every business. They wanted to register women. They wanted to criminalize the clients of unregistered women. And they wanted to raise the minimum age from 18 years old to 21 years old, because the government, after 10 years, thought 18 years old is not old enough to decide whether you want to be in prostitution or not. This law proposal was adopted in Parliament in 2011, rejected by the Senate in 2013, because the Senate thought registration of women in prostitution is against their privacy, and responsibility for sex buyers is not necessary, they thought. In 2014 there was an amended law proposal. In 2015 a private members bill proposed to ban pimping. It still has not been decided on. But this year, in May, there was a private member cross-party bill adopted in the Netherlands Parliament, criminalizing the buyer who knows or reasonably can be expected to know that he is buying a trafficking victim. This is huge. This means that the Netherlands has gone back has considered prostitution and has said, yes, there is a point, there is a responsibility of those persons who pay for sexual services, especially if they pay for the services of somebody who does not want to be there. Because the national government does not move with the law, the local governments are making their own new rules. The cities that you see here are cities which have already raised the minimum age from 18 to 21 years old, which have already started registering women, which have already started making it obligatory for women to speak at least a language such as English, Dutch, German, or French. And that way they are trying to improve the situation. Thank you for your attention. I want to ask you to really think about this carefully. And as Portuguese people, ask if you want to follow the example of the Netherlands, which after many evaluations show that it doesn't really work, or if you want to think about the 3 questions that I asked you in the beginning and think about maybe following the example of Sweden. I always say it is not a women's right to be in prostitution. It is a women's right to live a life free from prostitution. Thank you for your attention.